Have you ever felt anger that burns inside, that frustration that seems to corrode your soul, leaving a bitter taste that lingers for days, weeks, or sometimes even years? Perhaps it was unexpected criticism, a look of contempt, or a cold silence that sounds louder than any scream. And then it happens. Your heart pounds, your chest tightens, your mind replays every detail of that scene in an endless loop. You feel the need to react, perhaps with harsh words, perhaps with vengeful silence, or simply swallowing it all and focusing only on the pain. But what if I told you that there is a way to never experience that anger again, never to be disappointed in anyone again? It does not mean becoming a cold and indifferent person, quite the contrary. It means achieving such a deep state of balance in which nothing, absolutely nothing, that others do has power over you. And this is not an empty promise. Carl Jung, one of the greatest thinkers of the past century, left us valuable clues on how to achieve this state. Today, I will guide you on a path that not only frees you from anger and frustration, but also uncovers something much deeper, the real reason why you feel this way. But before we go any further, I want you to imagine a situation. You are at a family dinner. The atmosphere is pleasant. Everything seems to be in harmony, until suddenly someone comments, perhaps about your professional life, perhaps about your personal choices, maybe about something you did or did not do. And then, like a well-aimed arrow, these words hit you. Your stomach churns, your blood boils, your chest tightens. You force a smile, pretending you do not care, but inside everything is burning. The night ends, but the feeling does not go away. That same night, you lie in bed, reliving that scene over and over, as if reflecting on it could erase that pain. Now, I ask you, why did this affect you so much? Perhaps you will say because it was unfair, or because it is not true, or even because it was said cruelly. But Jung teaches us that the answer is different. What really hurt you was not what was said. You see, if someone said something absurd, something that makes no sense, you would laugh. If during an argument, someone says, "You are a terrible ballet dancer," and you have never danced ballet in your life, it would not affect you. But if the comment touches something that somehow already exists within you, a fear, an insecurity, a doubt, then the wound opens. Anger and frustration do not come from another. They come from within. But why does this happen? Jung explained that we carry something called the shadow within us. The shadow is everything we try to hide from ourselves. It is our insecurities, our fears, our childhood traumas, everything we cannot accept about ourselves for some reason. And the shadow has gigantic power over us. The more we try to ignore it, the stronger it becomes. When someone makes a comment that hurts us, what is really happening is that they have unintentionally touched a part of our shadow. That is why we sometimes get disproportionately angry over seemingly trivial things. That is why certain words, certain looks, certain attitudes hurt us so much, while other people in the same situation might just shrug and move on. Now, pause for a moment and think about the last time someone said something that really angered you. And now, instead of focusing on what was said, ask yourself what it awakened in me. Was it a fear of not being good enough? Was it a feeling of not being appreciated? Was it a childhood trauma that you thought you had overcome? Jung teaches us this. Anger is an internal alarm. It does not come to destroy us. It comes to warn us. But the problem is that most people do not hear that alarm. They simply react impulsively. They feel attacked, they feel rejected, and withdraw. They feel undervalued and try at all costs to prove their worth. And so, without realizing it, they live trapped in an endless cycle of pain and frustration. But what if there was another way to deal with this? What if, instead of reacting automatically, you could turn every moment of anger or frustration into a portal to self-knowledge? Think about it. If every time you felt anger and resentment, you could use that moment to better understand yourself, to grow, to strengthen yourself, then, over time, anger simply would not have power over you. Because instead of seeing it as an enemy, you would begin to see it as a tool for your own evolution. And that is the key that few people know. Anger and frustration are not problems to be eliminated. They are an invitation to look within and understand what needs to be healed. Now, I invite you the next time you feel anger or frustration, instead of reacting automatically, to pause for a moment and ask yourself, what is this trying to show me? This small shift in perspective can completely change how you handle your emotions. Let us consider how the shadow is formed, how it affects us, and most importantly, how we can integrate it so that nothing, absolutely nothing, affects us again as before. The answer to how to never be angry or disappointed in anyone again is closer than you think. But for that, you need to be willing to look inside yourself, and I guarantee you, as soon as you see the truth, you will never be the same. Have you ever had the feeling that certain moments in your life repeat themselves, as if you are reliving the same conflict, the same pain, the same frustration, but in different circumstances? Maybe it is that criticism at work that always hits you unbearably, or those family relationships that, no matter how hard you try, always end in misunderstandings and resentments, or even that bitter feeling of being ignored. It is as if you are being guided by an invisible pattern, causing certain situations to affect you much more strongly than they should. What if I told you that this pattern is not in the external world, but within you? Carl Jung called it the shadow, and understanding your shadow is the first step towards preventing pain from ever dominating you. Before we talk about how to integrate this hidden part of yourself, let us understand how it is formed. Imagine a child in their early years of life. They are pure expression. When they feel joy, they laugh without fear. When they are sad, they cry without shame. When they are angry, they scream and kick. They do not judge their emotions. They simply feel them. But then something happens. They begin to understand that some of these expressions are not welcomed. Perhaps you have heard phrases like, "Stop crying, be cool, do not be angry, it is not pretty, be a good girl, boys do not cry." Gradually, this child learns that certain parts of their personality are unacceptable, and to be loved to be accepted, they begin to hide these aspects within themselves. Learning to smile when they are sad, swallowing their anger, instead of expressing it, staying silent when something hurts them. And so, little by little, a part of them is suppressed. They still feel those emotions, but now they are trapped in a dark corner of their consciousness where they cannot be seen. Jung called this dark corner the shadow. But there is a problem. What is suppressed does not disappear. It persists. And that is why, as adults, we often react too strongly to certain situations, because, without realizing it, these situations awaken parts of our shadow that have been buried for a long time. Now, think about when you last felt angry or deeply disappointed in someone. What or who caused you pain? Try to ask yourself what that situation is trying to show me about myself. For example, if you feel invisible in certain relationships, could it be touching that part of you that has always been afraid of being unimportant? If controlling people irritate you, could it be revealing your side that fears losing control? If criticism devastates you, is there a part of you that is still desperately seeking approval? The truth is that the people who bother us the most are, most of the time, mirrors of those parts of ourselves that we do not want to see, and this is where the work of shadow integration begins. But shadow integration does not simply mean recognizing that we are full of traumas and insecurities. It means much more. Integrating the shadow means realizing that all emotions have a purpose. It means ceasing to fight against yourself and instead using emotions as tools for growth and transformation. Let us look at a real example. Imagine Mariana. She is 52 years old. She has worked hard for decades and has always been proud of her independence. But at home, she feels that no one appreciates her efforts. Her husband does not notice when she is feeling down. Her children do not seem to realize everything she does for them, and this consumes her. She catches herself thinking, "Why does no one recognize what I do?" But the real problem is not her family. The real problem is that she herself never learned to value herself. In childhood, Mariana grew up hearing that she needed to be useful to be loved. So, without realizing it, she tied her self-worth to what she did for others. The lack of recognition from those around her affected her so much because it touched precisely that point. She herself never gave herself the recognition she sought externally. When Mariana realizes this, something changes. She stops waiting for others to validate her worth. She begins to look at herself and recognize her value. And as if by magic, that silent anger she carried begins to lose its power, and the same can happen to you. If you learn to look inside yourself and understand what is behind your emotions, no one will be able to knock you off course. But it is a process that requires patience. The shadow was created over decades, and integration does not happen overnight. But Jung left us a clear path for this, and this path begins with self-knowledge. In the next chapter, I will show you step by step how to turn what hurts you into your greatest source of strength. But before we finish, I want to leave you with something that will help you start this process right now. Many people spend their entire lives trying to control their emotions without even understanding where they come from. That is why I have combined the deepest principles of Jung into something practical, the Jung method, which takes only 5 minutes a day, but can help you see life more clearly and above all find the inner peace you have always sought. If you feel you need a tool to manage this process, the ebook Jung method, Jung's 5 minutes a day for inner peace and clarity of mind, may be exactly what you have been waiting for. It is available in the pinned comment to this video, and I invite you to take this first step if you want to understand how to identify and stop the emotional triggers that cause you to lose control. Stay with me, because you will discover a powerful method that allows you to never again be a hostage to your own reactions. Have you ever noticed that some people know exactly which buttons to push to make you angry? Maybe you are bothered by a colleague at work who always makes subtle remarks, or a family member who insists on treating you as if you are still a child, or even a stranger in a traffic jam who manages to ruin your day in seconds. But the question that few ask is, why? Why do some situations affect us so much, while others go unnoticed? Most people believe that anger arises because of what others do, but Jung shows us that the truth is different. Anger comes from what is inside us. What if I told you that instead of trying to eliminate this emotion, you could turn it into your greatest ally? Anger has a purpose. It does not appear for no reason. It is a sign that something inside you needs to be seen, and that is exactly what we are going to explore now. Close your eyes for a moment and try to remember the last time you were really angry. Now, forget for a moment the person or situation that irritated you and ask yourself, what did I really feel? Fear, frustration, injustice, rejection? Anger rarely comes alone. It is the outer layer of something deeper. And the more you ignore what is deeper, the more the anger grows. Carl Jung said that what you resist persists. So, if you try to suppress your anger, if you try to pretend it does not exist, or just vent without understanding why, you are only fueling the cycle. Now, imagine that your anger is a map, and that map points directly to your inner wounds. Every time you get angry, there is a hidden opportunity, an opportunity to look inside yourself and ask what still needs to be healed within me. And here is a shocking fact. Many of your reactions are not yours. They were programmed into you throughout your life. Perhaps from childhood experiences, maybe from beliefs that you absorbed without realizing it, maybe from years of trying to be what others expected of you. Now, think about this. How many times have you reacted in a way that you later regretted? Have you ever stopped to ask yourself where these reactions come from? Imagine the following scene. You have an important meeting. You have spent several days preparing a project presentation, and when it is finally your turn, your boss makes a comment. "I expected more from you." At that moment, something happens inside you. Your heart pounds, your hands start to sweat, and a mixture of anger and frustration wells up. But why? If you stop, you will see that your boss's comment is not the real problem. The real problem is that it activated something inside you. Perhaps that comment brought you back to childhood, to the moment when you did something with all your effort only to hear, "You can do better." Maybe it made you feel the same feeling that you are never good enough. And so, without realizing it, you are no longer in the present. You are reliving that old pain. This is what Jung called projection. When you react intensely to something in the present, it is because you are actually projecting onto it a part of your past. Now, reflect for a moment. When was the last time there was a situation in which you felt anger? If you look deeper, does that anger really belong to that situation? Or is it a reflection of something that has long been inside you? If any answer came to mind, share it in the comments. You may be surprised to realize how much deeper our reactions are rooted than we think. There are 3 ways to deal with anger. 1. Suppress it, pretending that everything is okay. Swallow it, and move on. 2. Explode it, scream, argue, act impulsively. But both options are a mistake. Suppressing anger leads to its accumulation inside you, and one day, when you least expect it, it explodes so you cannot control it. On the other hand, expressing anger without awareness only intensifies the cycle and can lead you to actions that you later regret. So, what is the alternative? There is a third way. Jung said that anger should neither be suppressed nor released uncontrollably. It should be understood. And here is a simple exercise that can completely change your relationship with this emotion. The next time you feel anger, take the following 3 steps. 1. Appear, do not react. Immediately take a deep breath and create space between impulse and action. 2. Observe. Instead of focusing on what happened, ask yourself, what exactly I am feeling right now. 3. Investigate. Ask yourself, is this anger speaking about the present or about something deeper inside me? At first, this process may seem difficult because we are used to reacting automatically, but the more you practice, the more you become the master of your emotions, and there comes a point where you simply no longer allow yourself to be carried away. The words of others lose their power to hurt you. Conflicts cease to be triggers and become opportunities for learning. The anger that once dominated you becomes a guide to your personal growth. Now, I want to hear from you. In what last situation did you react without thinking? If you had applied this exercise, would your reaction have been different? Share in the comments. You may notice something in yourself that you had never noticed before. Now you can continue to react automatically, allowing anger and frustration to control you, or you can begin to use these emotions in your favor. The path that Jung left us is not to eliminate anger, but to deeply understand it. Let us take an even bigger step: how to turn anger and frustration into emotional intelligence so that nothing can ever throw you off balance again. Learn to deal with your emotions in a way that few people know. Do not miss the opportunity, because that is where everything starts to change. Have you ever noticed that some people have the gift of staying calm, even in the face of the most serious provocations, while others at a simple remark or gesture erupt in anger as if they are on the verge of exploding? What differentiates these people? Maybe some are simply born with unshakable self-control, and others are doomed to be hostages to their emotions. Or is there a secret that can be learned? The answer to this question can completely change your relationship with anger. And if you follow this reflection to the end, you will understand that anger is not a problem to be eliminated. In fact, it can be your best ally. But before I tell you how to do this, I want to tell you a story. Imagine a man named Roberto. Roberto is 46 years old, and to outsiders, it seems that he has a stable life, a good job, a structured family, no great obvious tragedy. But there is something that no one notices. Inside, Roberto carries a volcano. He gets angry easily. His colleagues say he is too stressed. His wife has gotten used to walking around him on eggshells, and his children, without even understanding it very well, are afraid to see him explode. But Roberto does not realize the consequences of this. He thinks that the problem is the world. After all, he would not be so angry if the people around him were not so incompetent, if only the drivers in traffic jams were not so slow, if your children knew how to respect their space, if his wife did not ask questions at inappropriate times. But what Roberto does not understand is that his anger does not come from outside. It comes from within, and it has come from afar, because Roberto grew up in a family where expressing emotions was a sign of weakness. When he cried, his father said, "Swallow your tears." A man does not feel pain. When he tried to vent his frustrations, they told him to be quiet. So, from an early age, he learned to swallow everything. But there is an important detail. What is not expressed does not disappear. Roberto's restrained anger grew, and over time, he found other ways to get out. Small episodes of irritation, exaggerated demands, and increasingly frequent fits of rage. Until one day, something had to happen. Roberto was in a meeting at work. Your boss made a remark that may seem insignificant to someone. Maybe you can improve this point in the next report, but for Roberto, it was like a punch in the stomach. His body reacted before he even had time to think. His heart was beating furiously, the blood rushed to his face, and before he realized it, he had already begun to aggressively launch a counterattack. The meeting ended in confusion. The boss was silent, the colleagues turned away, and at that moment, Roberto realized that something was deeply wrong. But the most shocking thing happened later. That night, trying to fall asleep, Roberto realized that what bothered him most was not the boss's comment. It was the feeling of being criticized. And then, for the first time, he asked himself, "Why does this affect me so much?" And the answer came like an emotional blow. He remembered his father. He remembered all the times he had been criticized. He remembered getting a high score at school, and instead of a compliment, hearing, "And why not 10?" He remembered playing football, and instead of recognition, hearing, "Could have done better." He remembered every moment when he tried to be accepted, but always heard that it was not enough. And then it all made sense. Roberto's anger was not directed at his boss. It was against all the times he felt not good enough. Against the years he swallowed the pain of not being recognized, against the child inside him, who was still waiting for approval. And then he finally understood what Carl Jung had already explained decades ago. Anger is not about the other. It is about you. Now, pause for a moment and think. When was the last time you felt uncontrolled anger? What if, instead of just remembering the situation, you tried to see what was really behind that emotion? Because here is the big secret. Anger always has a purpose. It never arises by chance. It comes to show you something that you have not yet resolved within yourself, but there is a problem. Most people do not know how to interpret that message. They simply react. They get angry and take it out on someone, or they get angry and try to swallow it until they cannot take it anymore, and the cycle continues. But what if there was another way? What if you could use that anger as a tool for self-knowledge? What if, the next time you feel that urge, you could pause, look inside, and understand what it is trying to show you? Think about it. Science has already confirmed what Jung said over a century ago. A study from Stanford University showed that anger activates the same areas of the brain that are associated with fear and trauma. This means that when you get angry, your brain is not just reacting to the current moment. It is reliving memories from the past, as if each negative experience leaves a trace, and when something happens in the present that resembles the old trauma, your brain triggers the same defense mechanism. But here is the most important detail. Neuroplasticity proves that reactions can be reprogrammed. Your brain can learn to interpret emotions in a new way. You can learn to get out of autopilot, but for that, you need to be willing to look at your anger differently, not as an enemy, but as a professor. Now, I want to suggest a task. The next time you feel anger, instead of reacting without thinking, follow these steps. 1. Appear, take a deep breath, and create space between impulse and reaction. 2. Observe. What exactly are you feeling? Anger, frustration, fear? 3. Conduct your research. Does this emotion belong to the current situation, or is it related to something deeper within you? If you do this for several days, you may notice a pattern, and that pattern may reveal a truth about you that has been hidden for years. Now, tell me in the comments, if you could turn your anger into clarity, what would change in your life? Think carefully. I will show you how this change can affect not only you, but all your relationships. Anger can lead to destruction, or it can be growth. The choice will always be yours. Have you ever wondered what your life would be like if nothing could knock you down, if no unpleasant comment, no disrespect, or any criticism could shake your peace anymore? Imagine waking up in the morning knowing that whatever happens, you are completely in control of your emotions. Imagine no longer carrying grudges. Imagine never feeling that suffocating anger that consumes your thoughts and keeps you losing sleep. It seems impossible, but if you have come this far, you already know that it is not because along this path. We have discovered something important. Anger and frustration are not external problems. They are mirrors of what is inside you. And if that is true, then there is a way out, a path that not only frees you from those emotions, but also makes you stronger, wiser, and more balanced than ever before. And today, we will take the last step on this path. If there is something that causes us suffering, it is trying to control what is beyond our reach. We want others to treat us right. We want them to acknowledge our efforts. We want them to respect our limits, and when that does not happen, frustration arises. But here is the bitter truth you need to swallow. You will never have control over others. You will never be able to prevent someone from criticizing you. You can never guarantee that you will be understood correctly. So why do we continue trying? Because we have been taught to believe that our happiness depends on external factors. If someone treats us well, we feel valued. If they ignore us, we feel insignificant. If they betray us, we feel that we are not good enough. But it is all an illusion, because the truth is that what others do says more about them than about you. And if you truly understand this, you will realize something liberating. There is a message hidden in that anger. Maybe it is telling you that you need to set clearer boundaries. Maybe it is showing you that you are still seeking external validation. Maybe it is warning you that you are stuck in an old, unresolved pain. But there is one thing that anger never tells you to do. It never asks you to react impulsively. It never asks you to scream. It never asks you to take revenge. It never asks you to hold a grudge. Anger does not want to destroy you. It wants to change you, but for that, you need to stop fighting it and start listening to it. Have you ever met someone who seemed to possess unshakable calm? That type of person who, even when they are insulted, remains calm, even when they are offended, does not lose composure, even when they are provoked, does not react impulsively. What is the secret of these people? They are not cold. They are not insensitive. They have simply learned something that most people never realize. They have chosen not to give power to what they cannot control. They know that every time they react too sharply, they are giving their emotional power to someone else. They know that anger is not a signal to attack, but an invitation to reflect. And above all, they know that no one can throw them off balance without their permission. Now, I want you to think about when was the last time you lost control, the last time you reacted in a way that you later regretted, the last time you got upset about someone's comments or attitude. And now, imagine that situation repeating itself, but this time you are different. This time you are aware. You feel the anger rising, but you do not react immediately. You watch it, you take a deep breath, you ask yourself what it is trying to show me, and instead of exploding, you choose to react consciously. Imagine how this will affect your life. Imagine how many arguments could have been avoided. Imagine how many days of unnecessary suffering you could save. Imagine the power that this will give you. Now, tell me, are you ready to take this step? Write, "I am ready," in the comments if you want to finally change your emotions, because the next step is practical. In the last part of this journey, I will guide you through a detailed plan on how to apply all of this in your daily life. Let us turn this knowledge into action. Let us make this change real. True transformation begins now. Take a deep breath. You have come so far. Something inside you is calling, perhaps a silent call. Perhaps because on some level, you are already tired of being controlled by emotions that seem stronger than you, perhaps because at some point on your journey, you felt how the weight of anger and frustration was pulling you to a place where you no longer want to be. And here, the inevitable question arises, what to do with all of this? The answer is here. If you follow this plan, you will not only understand anger and frustration, you will use them to your advantage. This is not empty theory. It is a time-tested method based on the discoveries of Carl Jung and supported by modern neurobiology. From this moment on, every time you feel the anger burning inside, every time frustration makes you doubt the world, you will have a tool. And over time, something extraordinary will happen. Those situations that used to overwhelm, you will lose their power over you. Be prepared, because this is the last piece of the puzzle. Step 1, the moment of awareness. Anger is not the problem. The problem is your relationship with it. Most people believe that anger arises suddenly, like lightning falling from the sky, but this is not true. Anger does not appear out of nowhere. It is built in silence. It all starts with a small spark, an inappropriate word, a look, a gesture, and then, like a fire spreading in the wind, it spreads, but there is a secret that no one has told you. Before the explosion, there is a moment. A time when you still have a choice. This moment is short, too short, but if you train yourself to recognize it, you can change everything. That moment of awareness is everything. Step 2, 3 seconds that change everything. Before responding, before acting, before saying any thought, take a deep breath. 3 seconds, only 3 seconds, may be enough to stop an emotional pattern that has been repeating for years. Practice this pause. Over time, those 3 seconds will turn into 5, then 10, and one day, you will realize that you have control over something that previously seemed uncontrollable. Step 3, the inner dialogue that changes everything. Following the pause, ask the right question, and that question is not, "Why is this happening to me?" or "Why did so and so treat me like this?" These questions put you in the position of a victim, and you are not a victim. The right question is, what is this situation trying to teach me? Because, as Jung said, what affects us is a reflection of what we have not yet resolved within ourselves. If someone's criticism destroys you, it is because deep down, you still doubt your own worth. If rejection paralyzes you, it is perhaps because a part of you still believes that you are not worthy of love. If injustice consumes you, it is perhaps because you carry within you the wounds of the past where you are not heard. Think about this. Anger and frustration are not just emotions. They are mirrors, and when you learn to use them in this way, they will cease to be a burden and become a compass. Step 4. The process of resignification. Now that you have identified the root of the emotion, it is time to give it a new meaning, and here is the most powerful part of the process. You cannot change the past, but you can change the story you tell about it. For example, if you were criticized in childhood and experience a deep fear of failure, you can continue to see yourself as someone who is never good enough, or you can decide that that experience only taught you how to grow. If you were rejected and it still hurts, you can continue to see yourself as someone unworthy of love, or you can understand that that rejection said nothing about you, but rather about that person's limitations. What happened to you cannot be erased, but what it means is in your hands, and this changes everything. Step 5. A daily practice that strengthens your mind. None of this works if it is just theory. The human brain is like a muscle. It needs to be trained, and the best way to train your mind is to create a daily ritual, something that will remind you every day of your commitment to this change. It can be a diary in which you write down your reflections on moments of anger and frustration. It can be a reminder on your cell phone with the question, "What can I learn from this?" Or it can be a simple habit to stop and observe your emotions several times a day. The important thing is to create a space for self-reflection, and over time, allow your brain to process emotions differently. And if you do this every day, even for just a few minutes, you will see something incredible happen. Your brain will begin to process emotions in a new way, and what used to dominate, you will lose strength. Step 6. The final choice. Now, everything comes down to one choice. You can continue to react automatically, as you have done so far, or you can decide that from now on, nothing will have power over your emotions without your permission. But this change only happens if you act. And if you feel that you need a practical tool to help you in this process, I want to recommend something special. Jung showed us that understanding the mind is the first step to mastering it, and to help you apply all of this in a simple and profound way. I have gathered the most transformative concepts of his method into something that you can practice every day. The ebook, Jung Method, Jung's 5 minutes a day for inner peace and clarity of mind, is a simple and easy guide that teaches you how to implement these principles in your life in just 5 minutes a day. If you feel you need to continue, the link to access it is in the pinned comment to this video, because it is not enough to understand. It requires practice, and this may be your first step. Now, before we finish, I want to hear from you. What is the biggest lesson you have learned from this journey? If you want to share, leave it in the comments. You may be surprised to know that your reflection can help someone else go through the same path. And if this video brought you clarity, be sure to subscribe to the channel, Wholeness in Reflection, like this video so that this message reaches more people, and turn on notifications, because this conversation is not over. The journey to your inner world is just beginning.